Hello, Ari.
Hey Steve, what's going on?
Hey, hey, what's going on? You're in New York. No, where are you in New
I'm in New
York or in
York. I'm
Taiwan
in New
right now?
York. Rainy,
You're
rainy, rainy New
okay.
York.
All right. Well, let me just for those many people know you. You have a very popular channel on YouTube, and you speak Chinese extremely well. I looked at some of your videos. I found them very interesting. And so maybe I could begin by asking you. It says somewhere that you teach Chinese. You do these videos where you showcase your Chinese skills, but I think more important in a way you introduce aspects of Chinese food and Chinese culture to people who know very little
Yeah.
about it. So can I ask you a little bit about your background, introduce yourself, and how you got into doing all these things?
Yeah, so I would say my background as it relates to Chinese, I started studying Chinese the summer after high school. I was a little bit bored, looking for something to do. And so I just kind of saw an ad in the paper for a free Chinese class. And I always knew that I liked studying languages and I was good at it, so I was like, all right, Chinese sounds like a lot of fun. So I took that class, and it ended up being a really, really great experience. I continued studying, in college, sophomore year of school. I ended up getting a scholarship to go to China, learn Chinese. Or
Can I stop you for a
Yeah,
second? Can I stop you for a second? So, why would someone offer free Chinese lessons? Is this a way to get you in the door for further Chinese lessons,
it's
or
the way
was
it's
this
the way for the Chinese government to promote the study of Chinese internationally.
okay? Chinese government, yeah, right. Okay,
Um, so
sorry. So then you went to
yeah,
China,
hmm so they're handing out scholarships to foreigners to go to China to learn Chinese. I went to China, spent a
right?
year in Beijing.
Right.
Really enjoyed my time there.
And this was what year again? Just
This
to
was 2010,
2010.
2010
Okay.
academic year. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yep.
so loved it. Came back to the States, and I kind of had like the language learning bug at that point slash Chinese culture bug. So I started making like videos on YouTube, just like little language learning videos and
Mm-hmm.
accent videos and just kind of like fun things. And I like doing that, but I never really kind of took it seriously until maybe a couple years ago when I started doing this channel full time. Um,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so that's like the 30-second elevator version, but happy to get like into more detail, on any of these things.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So before we get into your videos, which are very entertaining, and I think people will enjoy looking at them, Chinese. A lot of people think Chinese is very
Yep.
difficult. How difficult did you find it? And do you have any advice for people who either are in the middle of trying to learn Chinese or have contemplated learning Chinese?
Right. Yeah. So that's a great question. So I would say, I think that in English speaking countries, we tend to view Chinese as like the pinnacle of intellectual ability, right? If you can speak Chinese, then you must be the smartest person on earth, which anyone, like any non Chinese person who spent time studying Chinese can tell you it's kind of nonsense. Like, Chinese is not, I guess learning to write is one, learning to write and read is a whole separate beast, but actually learning to speak Chinese is not really the hardest thing on the planet. It's I think the biggest difficulty for non-native speakers getting over is the tones initially. Um,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
you know, but I think that like you can the grammar I would say relative to other languages I've studied is actually fairly similar to English. Um, there's a couple weird things there, but there's also a lot of things that make it easy to learn. So honestly, like it's not like I had spent like I had learned a year of Chinese before going to China, but I was like conversationally fluent in Chinese within a few months, I would say, of starting to live in China. Um,
Okay, but the fact remains. I mean, I've studied
yeah,
Chinese, and to me, there's really two issues. One is the characters, and the other is the
right,
tones. So, I mean, every language has those things that are difficult. If you get rid of the things that are difficult, then it's easy.
yeah,
But you're still left with the things that are
right,
difficult. So, A, how did you tackle the tones? And B, how did you tackle the
right.
characters?
So I would say with tones, I kind of have a like a gel what's it called, get out of jail free card with that one, to be honest. Like, I've always been good at languages and accents, and so that just kind of came very naturally and easily for me. I will say, and I know it's very difficult though for a lot of people, and something that's helped me and other people in the past get over that is like audio repetition. So listening to like recording yourself speak and then playing it back with native references to whatever you're saying is super helpful for trying to understand where your tones are wrong and where your accent's wrong. And you definitely need to do that, but you also just need to practice like a ton. Like, if you want to get good at tones, I mean, you can speak, like, I definitely know foreigners who've spoken Chinese for a long time and still have really crappy tones, but like, that's the first step, right? The first thing you have to do is speak, and then you're going to notice that your tones are not good. So the way to get over that, I feel like, is through deliberate practice with practicing your own tones and comparing it to native speakers. As far as characters, that one definitely did not come as naturally for me. Like, first of all, my handwriting is really bad, so I've never been I haven't been good with just writing things and like eye to hand memory. That's not one of my strong suits. So with that, I would say I just kind of tried to focus on, like, I tried to like separate what was important to me and what wasn't. So pretty early on, I decided, like, there's no way I'm ever going to be able to write Chinese well. Like, it's just not in the cards, you know, like, I am not a calligraphy guy. So you know what, I was like, and I know that in introductory classes, they really try to stress like stroke order and, you know, you got to get the form right, all this stuff. But like, I just didn't want to focus that because there were things that were more important to me. So I made kind of a decision early on to not focus on that and focus more on just recognition and recall. And so, which I think is much more important for reading, and you know, just all the stuff that you do in day-to-day life in Chinese. Even for texting, if you're typing in Chinese, you're probably typing with pinyin, which is basically all recall. All you need to know is how the character sounds, and then when you type it in, it's going to come up, and as long as you can recognize that that's the right character, you're good. So so I just kind of focused on recall, and the way that I got good at that, and I'm still not like the best at recognizing Chinese characters and reading Chinese, but you know, the way that I got to the level where I am now, which is that I can comfortably read most stuff that I want to read on a daily basis, is one, you know, initially it was lots of Anki, just lots of straight memorization of characters. You know, it sucks, but like, you got to do it. You just got to just memorize a whole ton of stuff. And just using it in context, you know, like when I would use certain characters, I think there's one school of philosophy that says, all right, you just got to memorize the kanjis individually, and like, you know, it just makes just like you know, you can figure out like what the original meaning is, and that'll help you memorize. For me, that never worked. I just tried to memorize the words, like, and then I would learn from that. I would learn in context what the original, what the individual characters would mean, you know, because Chinese is a language of words, not characters. So like that was the way that I tried to memorize things and then learn the characters from there.
Right. I mean, everyone has their own approach. I must say, with regard to the tones, I focused a lot on listening.
Yeah.
And in particular, I listened to the sort of xiangsheng comic dialogues where they tend to exaggerate the tones. I didn't really try to listen to myself too much because I didn't want to become too self-conscious. Right. And I think you got to be a little careful in terms of an accent. If you spend too much time listening to yourself, you get self-conscious. Yeah. Whereas I found that if I just let it go, but you have to do a lot of listening. If you just speak with people every now and again, you'll continue to have poor tones. Yes. But I think you can train yourself to get better at them. Yeah. And on the characters, I agree with you. I have poor handwriting, but when I was studying Chinese, we had to write. For my final exam, I had to be able to translate newspaper editorials from English into Chinese. So the only you know, objective was to make sure people could read what I had written. Right. It didn't have to look nice. Right. But you're absolutely right. Nobody writes today. I mean, similarly in Japanese or Russian, I never write, but I use my computer so I can communicate, you know, writing on the computer. But I did find that writing the characters out by hand helped me learn them. But I agree, I had a terrible handwriting. And I also agree that Chinese, I mean, I think learning any language is not a matter of intellectual achievement. It's simply a matter of allowing yourself to, not resist the language and allowing it to enter your brain and just letting go. And so none of these things are necessarily a sign of great. I'm sure it wouldn't be hard to find some very, high IQ professors, say foreigners in the United States or Canada, who speak with a very heavy accent, for example. So I don't think fluency in a language is necessarily a sign of a high IQ. Anyway, so you learn Chinese. And now what got you into these? Very entertaining, and I really encourage people to go and look at them. I mean, you're getting like 3, 4, 5 or more million views for these videos. Yeah. And okay, let me ask you this. To what do you attribute the appeal of your videos?
Yeah, to be honest, I initially, I was sort of a little bit surprised by it. I think that one thing that I've learned is that I think people want some sort of inspiration when they're learning languages. Like they want to be able to see a goal, like they want to be able to see like what's the point of learning a language? Like why should I even bother spending all this time with these textbooks and like listening drills and like why do I even care? So like I think what my videos let people do is give them a reason to care, right? Like if you learn a new language, you're getting a new personality, you're getting a new soul, you're getting a new way to interact with a huge number of people on this planet that previously you just weren't able to do. And so like I think that in my videos, I'm able to show like what it's like to have meaningful interactions and relationships with people that for someone like me, just growing up in the U.S. with only English as my native language, would otherwise have been impossible had I not learned this language. So I think that and people message me all the time, just saying that these videos help them, like inspire them to want to learn Mandarin or other languages, and so I keep doing them.
I think, what I think is great in them is that I think for the average New Yorker walking down the street, seeing some Chinese food vendor, consider them to be sort of very distant, very exotic, very strange, may not want to even buy anything from them. And so you bring these people closer. You approach them, and they come across as being very, of course they're human, but we see them as very strange, and it just creates a sort of a sense of familiarity with Chinese street vendors, Chinese culture, Chinese food. So I think that's a really good service. It is interesting to note, though, that for a Westerner to go and speak to some people, say in Chinese on the street, is curious, interesting, whatever. I'm trying to picture a Chinese or a Japanese person goes to the States and does videos of going around speaking to people in English.
Yeah.
That wouldn't be very interesting at all. Nobody would be interested in that. So it is a reflection of how I guess people in China and Japan get much more exposure to Western culture, Western people, Western things, and we get much less exposure to them and their culture, and therefore they're perceived as more strange. And therefore, when you go there and you just interact with them naturally in their language, it's perceived as something interesting, whereas the reverse wouldn't necessarily be the case.
Sure. Yeah, I think that's very true. I think another factor contributing to this is that I think that there's whether it's due to the monolingual status of English in many Western countries or what have you, I think there's something about language learning that is kind of prized as sort of like a good in its own like regard in Western countries, whereas in these videos I've noticed like my Chinese or people and my Asian fans from Asia are not as interested in them as my Western fans, and I think that there's something about like you know,
Sorry, they're not interested in what?
like like these types of videos where I, you know, interact with people in the street in Chinese.
Oh, I see what
Right.
you mean. Yeah, they're of less
They're
interest
less interested in the
to
West. Yeah,
Asians.
and I think that part of
Yeah.
that is that in Asia, language learning is not necessarily like it's regarded as something like, you know, you should learn English because it can help you get economic opportunities, but it's not necessarily regarded as something cool or something like just I think there's a thing in American culture where, you know, maybe it's all the movies you see when like some guy busts out like 7 different languages and like, you know, it's like James Bond speaks like French, Spanish, or like whatever. Like there's just something cool about it that I think is sort of inherent to you know, Western culture that is not necessarily like, it's not necessarily regarded as like a pinnacle of intellectual achievement in China to be able to speak really good English. Like,
Yeah.
you know, so
I would say that I would have to disagree. I think that in the West, and of course the West is not just North America.
Yeah.
The West is Europe.
Right.
The West is whatever. Speaking many languages is valued, and it's also valued in Asia. We had a polyglot conference in Fukuoka, and there were a lot of people there from Asian countries: Japan, China, Korea, Indonesia.
yeah.
Whatever, who spoke many languages. I think that the difficulty is most people are not prepared to put the effort in. Most people would like to speak
Yeah.
1 other, 2 other, 3 other languages. When they discover that it's a lot of work, or at least a lot of time, then a lot of people are discouraged. Or because they use methods that are not very effective.
Yeah.
But I think generally, I don't think there's that much difference. My interaction with people from Asia, they're as appreciative of people who learn languages
Yeah.
as we are. I don't see a big difference there, except that I would even go as far as to say that in North America, someone who speaks a lot of languages is considered a bit freaky. Why would you want to do that? To some people.
Yeah,
To some people.
right.
But hey, everywhere you got all kinds of different
Right.
people. But at any rate, you know, I think it's great to see, and you're learning Fujianhua or Taiwanhua as well.
Yeah, Fujianhua and
Fujianhua, yeah.
that's what I've been learning most recently, which I think like back on the theme of engaging with people's cultures, like for me
Right.
like the reactions that I get from people when I can speak Fujonese with them as opposed to Mandarin are just so much greater. I think that
When you're saying Fujianhua, you're saying in Taiwan.
no, in New York
Or in
New
Fuzhou.
York.
Oh, in
Yeah.
New York. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, lots of
Yeah,
people
yeah.
lots of people in New York speak Fujonese.
Oh, I see.
Yeah,
Okay.
which is kind of like one of these weird accidents of geography, but yeah, it just happens like that.
So how about the Cantonese?
I speak a little bit Cantonese too, which I use in my videos sometimes, just because there's like
Right.
in New York, probably outside of Mandarin, the 2 biggest Chinese languages that people speak are Fujonese and Cantonese.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but
So, okay. Now, just to end up here, we could go on for quite a long time. So what do you do or intend to do with all of this? Where does this lead to? Are you just going to continue making these
Yeah.
videos? Or I see where you're teaching Chinese on a voluntary basis in New York.
yeah. Yeah, that's just kind of like for fun, and you know, it's nice to give back to the community. But, you know, yeah, I don't. That's a great question. I don't know where it goes. I mean, you know, like if you had asked me a year ago or 2 years ago what I would be doing in a year from that point, I wouldn't have any idea. So to me, trying to make long-term plans is like, it's like trying to nail Jello to a wall. Like I don't know what I'm going to be doing in a month from now. You know,
Okay.
so yeah. So the only thing that I'll say is just, you know, I want to keep making things that, you know, that can help share cultures and languages throughout the world, and just
Right.
be able to bring
Yeah.
some kind of like inspiration and joy to people's lives, and motivate people to learn Chinese or other languages. And you know, for me, I get a lot of, you know, like happiness and pride out of doing this. So yeah.
Well, I recommend people go and visit. I'll leave a link in the description box. Listen to Xiaoma speaking different languages and bridging the cultural divide. Anyway, thank you very much for chatting with us.
Thank you so much, Steve. Really appreciate it.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.